So there are four forces that we've identified when thinking about why agencies reach this plateau. So let's start with the first one, which is external trends. So the reality is, as an agency, clients their needs shift over time. Whether it's platforms change, AI is obviously a big one that's been introduced, and then even the buying behaviors of clients change. So while your offer that you've had for ages and ages um, may be working still, the market could be slightly shifting to a different direction that is taking away some of your business.
Yeah, and I'd say like a lot of growth, sometimes agency growth is about riding like different trends, whether that's kind of client industry cycles or different technology and platforms that are hot. I can remember like even back maybe 15 years ago or so. Remember when like Drupal was all the rage and like if all these enterprises were kind of adopting Drupal as a CMS, and it's a very different story today. And so there were shops that kind of really rode that wave and got big. Another one is more like on the industry side, like you could see, say, like something like the crypto bubble, produced a lot of agencies that were catering to that sector, and lots of work and money flowing. But once again, like that kind of ran its course. And but then you also see cyclical stuff across like different industries. I mean, tech funding cycles are notorious for having that cyclicality sometimes, and then even the early days of Barrel. I remember we had this run. This is like right around like the great financial crisis, but like right around then, actually, there was a lot of investment going into solar energy in the US. And we happened to have a lot of like these clean energy clients that were spending a lot of money kind of ramping up. And so, we rode that wave for a bit. And, that too, that industry evolved a lot as well. And so, yeah, there's a lot of external things that are always going to, play a role in the agency growth.
Yeah. So when you see your agency growing, sometimes it's really just your clients' industry is growing. Like, there's a lot of macro external trends that you're capturing. So when the cycle turns, it's easy to kind of see that as like, oh, maybe we did something wrong. But actually, it's just the whole industry where your clients operate have declined. All right. The next area is competitive forces. So the reality is that there'll be new entrants to the market that compete against you, and new um, competitors who have specializations could, out position you to your target market. So, let's say you had a strong positioning and differentiation in like 2018, that could be table stakes now, and people could be offering a lot more compelling um, offerings. So it's really something that, yeah, you always need to keep on top of.
Yeah, I would say to add to that, I mean, competition, there's also pricing pressures that come because you have competitive new entrants that are willing to charge less and undercut what you are charging. And a lot of that is like, an upstart maybe have lower cost structures, and, or maybe they have different ways of working that's, maybe more efficient than you are. I remember like this is like a clear story for us where, we had primarily kind of US based talent, and they're getting more expensive every year, and then you have some new entrants coming from, let's say, like Eastern Europe, Asia, and like they're able to do quality work but charge half the price for it, quarter of the price, and that changes the dynamic of the work that you're able to charge for, and then the way that clients kind of value that work as well. So these competitive forces are real, and you have to be on top of them.
Yeah, and you'll end up seeing it in, mostly your close rates. Like it's not going to be overnight, but you might see your close rates ticking down over time as your clients end up choosing one of these potentially lower cost or a better positioned competitors. All right, so the next area is talent. So it's interesting because this could be attrition of, the best people on your team just end up leaving over time, or there's stagnation of people that stay. So it's interesting when you kind of look at both sides where, a lot of your capability growth, oftentimes when you hire and you bring on fresh new talent, um, and fresh perspective and fresh ideas and skills. But if you, retain your team, loyalty is important and retention is important. But then that comfortable team that you've built can also have a comfortable output of work that doesn't necessarily innovate for your clients.
Yeah, and this is where the importance of like having fresh blood is important, right? You want that, and this is especially reflected in kind of the more senior roles that you might hire for. So if you've been super cautious about investing in senior hires, and your last senior hire was many years ago, or somebody that you promoted from within, you've kind of robbed yourself of that outside impactful perspective that might come in and kind of shake things up a little bit. And so yeah, I think there's that aspect of stagnation that happens just by not infusing your team with kind of new, fresh talent.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so the fourth area of force is client turnover. So we've definitely seen this where there's kind of the natural leak of clients that happen from things like budgets cut. So you end up churning a client, or the person, your main point person, your champion at the client leaves, and then or project ends. And all of this can happen even though you're executing, you feel like you're doing everything right, and your revenue can over time just stay flat because you're losing clients and you're winning some new business, but you're only like refilling what you lost, right? So it just feels like you're always working hard, and it's kind of like you're just like on a treadmill, but you're not moving anywhere. Like you keep doing the work, but you're just staying at the same place.
Yeah, I mean, this is like such a tell when we look at some of these agencies on the M&A side. Is like, it's like, hey, we had a fine year because we held things steady, and the profits were fine, but you look at kind of we look at the retention stats of like, oh wow, clients, you only retain, let's say, 60 to 70% of kind of the clients year over year. And so you had to kind of refill that, and it's probably a big lift to kind of fill that as well, because we know just from our own portfolio of agencies that typically you want to be over 70%, maybe over 80% to really give yourself a chance to grow the next year. And so yeah, this is basically a classic case of a leaky boat, and just because it looks like you didn't go down in revenue doesn't mean that you're in the clear.